I'm Corby Stowe with Oil Solutions Group. Appreciate David and FSTC having me out to speak to you about oil management. Oil management is kind of one of those subjects that everybody knows about. It's showing up on radar as oil commodity prices go up in cost, but it's still a little bit on the low priority stack. So I think it's being addressed more here recently, especially in the last 6 months. And then Food Service Equipment Reports just did an article on it this month, so it's definitely on the radar screen. Money's tight in operation, and this is a path for low-hanging fruit. So we'll talk about what breaks oil down, what you can do to prevent it, how you can communicate to the folks in the store that folks are actually doing this. We get you on track so we can save money and improve the quality of the fried food product. And it's interactive, so feel free to chime in as I'm going. Why is oil management important? Quality and economics. That's two main things, quality and economics. Probably sustainability, if you want to throw that in there, but it's a little broad at this point. Quality is imperative to provide optimized quality and consistent fried food products to patrons. Quality ensures repeat business revenue, and it's also protecting your brand's concept. You want to make sure that you're providing the best quality product to your customers that you possibly can. Economics, this might be a conservative number, but frying oil can account for 10% of your food costs. Are any operators in here that can give you an idea of what your oil costs are running right now? Just an idea. I guess they're pretty high, but I'm thinking 10% or maybe a little bit more at this point. All right, here's a jar graph that we put together. We did this with a major Atlanta-based QSR at the end of 2011. All right here, they were getting about 3 days on oil life. This is a bank of 3 fryers, 50-pound fryers, and 3 days on the low side, 5 days on the high side. They weren't really doing much. They were using just a paper filter. Really, as big as they are, again, oil management was so far down the priority stack, they were just thinking, well, this is just nature of the business, we'll just discard the oil. So we go in there, we did a test, we used a reusable fabric filter, and then we used a filter powder, filtered twice a day for 10 minutes. We took them from about 3-4 days all the way down to all the way up to 10 days, 8, 9, 10 days respectively. Just implementing good practices and educating the folks on what breaks oil down. So this is a lot of money. And also you've got a good sweet spot right here in the middle. So instead of 2 days on the sweet spot, you're going 8, 7, and 7. Yes, sir?
What does the TPM stand for?
Total polar materials. Total polar materials is the only scientific measurement of oil degradation. And I'm going to show you how we can measure that. Okay, this is a little part about chemical reactions during the frying process. This would be a fryer. You've got your heat source. We'll use a potato chip for an example. You've got oxygen aeration. That would be just air blowing down on the oil. You've got the absorption, vaporization, hydrolysis, your free fatty acids, and total polar materials as a byproduct of the cooking process. I won't bore you to death with all the chemical compounds of the thing, but this is basically gives you an idea of what takes place during the cooking process. All right, enemies of oil. This is what breaks down the oil. We'll identify what they are, and I'm going to tell you how you can prevent that, at least lower to the severity of it. So you have carbon, water, air, soap to greaser, salt, and heat. Carbon, well, that's a buildup of all the sediment that you're not filtering. Carbon's an enemy of oil. It causes a reaction that breaks the oil down. Now, as far as equipment, carbon builds up on the heat tubes and the coils, and it severely retards your recovery of the fryer. So when you get rid of that carbon, prevent it from building up. Also on your thermostats, a lot of folks don't realize this, but when carbon builds up on the thermostat, you can be off by 10, 15, 20 degrees, especially on the dials. So keep that in mind as we talk about what breaks this down. All right, so keep fryers clean and free of carbon and buildup of caramelized polymers by filtering oil a minimum of once a day, as well as performing quick drops throughout the day. Caramelized polymers are those orange rings of oil on the oil fill line. You see that? When you drain the oil, you'll see like a ring. Those are caramelized polymers. You can eliminate that and all the carbon buildup by just simply filtering once a day. Okay, you can polish it with a filter powder, whatever you do. But perform quick drops throughout the day. Quick drops removes all the sediment and all those crumbs and particles. Gets those out of the oil. If they stay in the oil, they continue cooking and producing carbon on all parts of the fryer. So that's something you can do to control the buildup of carbon. Also, you want to constantly skim the surface of the oil. Get rid of all the floating particulate. All right, that particulate comes in contact with the food, the next batch of food you're cooking. It gets on those products, you're serving that to your customers. So continuously skim throughout the day, get rid of all that stuff. And then once those surface particles finish cooking, they go down to the cold zone and they add up to the pile of the cold zone. So skim throughout the day. You also want to boil out the fryers as needed, but also do it in accordance with your manufacturer's directions. All right, never skip a daily filtration. All right, you skip a filtration, you lose 2 days of oil life, and you might already be proving that to yourself. Here's something I see a lot of here lately. You always have your local guy that comes out and he says he's filtering your oil. He comes by maybe once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. He's filtering your oil. You're paying him to do that. You've got to filter every day. All right, this is, skipping the filtration is not going to work for you. That guy who's filtering your oil 2 to 3 times a week, he's taking that oil and using it for biofuel, and then he's filtering that a couple times a day, so he doesn't have to invest in equipment to clean the sediment out of the oil before he sells it to the rendering process in place. So your folks are already filtering. You're already paying them to filter, so incorporate that. All right, keep fryers covered but not used. That's air, enemy of air. All right, you've got makeup air blowing down the fryers. You've got HVAC air. You can't do anything about that, but what you can do is keep those fryers covered when not in use. Open fryers, you can use a manufacturer-provided cover or a sheet pan. Pressure fryers, you really don't have an excuse for not covering the fryers up when not in use. They're already there. Ensure filtration equipment is clean and completely dry of water. Think of water. Water's like having, your oil. It's like having water in your gas tank. Where you get in trouble with this is, suppose you're using a paper filter, flat sheet filter, and your filter machine's got some puddles and residual water down at the bottom. Put your paper in there, it soaks with water. You drop 350 degrees of oil. What happens? That oil disintegrates, or the paper disintegrates, or it'll create a air bubble up underneath. The paper rises, breaks the seal. Now all of a sudden you're pumping crumbs up in your motor, and it's going to be a service call. So dry those filter machines out, let the drawers completely dry before you put it together. Never use soap or degreaser on filtration equipment, fry baskets, or any component that comes in contact with the oil. All right, soap and degreasers, those are surfactants. What happens is you cannot get that residue off of the sidewalls of the fryers or the filtering equipment. That oil it has a chemical reaction with the surfactants, and you're going to get foaming. You might even have clear, clean oil, and all of a sudden you notice it foaming. That's from soap and degreaser. So hot water only, dry it, no soap or degreaser. You do not salt bread or season over fry pots. You see this all the time. You've got a filler table over on the side, which is designed for that. But you always see guys get in a hurry, salting and breading over the fryers. Salt causes a reaction to the oil. Don't salt fries and then put them back in the fryer. And don't bread over the fryers. Breading produces a lot of unneeded sediment, which turns into carbon. Check thermostat calibration often. That heat is a big enemy of oil. It speeds up the oxidation process. It breaks it down. If the carbon gets up on the thermostats, you've got those dial thermostats. You might say 350, but would you bet a week's pay, month's pay on it? Probably not. Every degree above 375 with these new type oils, you lose 2, 3, 4 days of oil life just by being in a high temperature. It breaks down rapidly. So calibrate thermostats. Just check your temperature code once a day. If it shows good, if it's aligned, you're good to go. If not, get your service tech out there as soon as practical. All right, use an oil tracking sheet to determine, to track your oil life. A lot of folks will think, okay, today's Wednesday, I just put oil in there Monday, 3 days is all I ever get, it's time to go. What I would do to control that is just use an Excel spreadsheet or numbers, if you're using Mac. Put together something that's customized for your operations. So for example, maybe go out even 5-7 days. Did you filter? Yes. After lunch? Yes. Dinner? Filter? Yes, no. Did you throw oil away? Which pot did you throw oil away? This will show you what you're doing and keeps track, so the folks keeps them honest. So I highly recommend developing a oil tracking sheet that's relevant to your operation. And know exactly when it's time to discard the oil. This is really subjective. A lot of folks really don't know how to do this. What's the best way? How do I know? We're going to talk about that. Mechanical filtration. All right, we have built-in filtration and we have a portable filtration unit. All right, the thing I like about built-in filtration, it promotes filtration. Okay, your folks are more inclined to filter if they have built-in filtration. It's easy, it's convenient, and it's a lot safer. The downside to that is it usually has a smaller horsepower motor, so if the filtration media or filter media is not clean, you're going to have really reduced flow rates. But otherwise, I like the built-in filtration. The only other drawback is you don't have a way of getting that sediment out without a hose or line. But overall, this is a good way to go. And then, yes, ma'am?
How do you dry that?
How do you dry
Efficiently, or does it dry itself?
what the filter?
Yeah, after, if you hose it out, if you clean it out.
We're using an oil, or as far as what, a pre-rinse?
You're talking about not having the water
Right.
stay, yeah.
Just some cloths and just dry it down and maybe air dry it overnight would be the way to go. All right, so, the only bad thing about that is the sediment. You've got to have a good way of getting the sediment out. But otherwise, it's a great way to go. All right, portable filtration. You have a wand. Typically, you have a larger pump motor. You can handle a heavier braided load. The drawback to the portable unit is where are you going to store it? Okay, you got to have a place to store it. So, but both are good ways to go. And if you don't have a built-in filtration unit, then portable would be obviously the way to go. China caps, cone filtering over a stock pot is extremely dangerous. It's messy. It's time-consuming. It's not going to work for you to get that oil life. You have to use mechanical filtration. All right, passive versus active filtration. All right, passive, that's when you use just filter media. It removes the particulate, sediment, and crumbs. Examples would be filtered paper, stainless steel screens. Those are the screens that have the three components. You've got a top screen, a middle insert, and then the bottom piece has a frame with a clasp. They have to be washed out every day, but it's reusable. Fabric filters, that's something new that we're seeing a lot of. They work extremely well, filter down to 0.5 micron. They can last up to 1 or 2 weeks. You're not throwing oil and paper away in a landfill every day. Also, diatomaceous earth is a passive filtration. Also, cone filter, China cap. Active filtration removes dissolved impurities, total polar materials, free fatty acids, and particulate. Those liquid solubles that you can't see, removes those down to 1 micron. Examples, magnesium silicate, bleaching earth, silicate gel.
What's a China cap?
China cap's a stainless steel perforated, shaped like a cone, and you're looking maybe 300 microns. So all the sediment still gets through. But typically people will put a cheesecloth in there to slow down some of the particulate, but it's really counterproductive. All right, before we figure out or discuss when it's time to discard, I want to hold up here and address a real critical element to this whole thing. None of this will work unless you are able to get folks to buy into the program and you have somebody that can take ownership of the fryers. You always hear about, okay, well, I just can't get my people to do this. Well, all right, well, who's managing who? I mean, are they on your payroll or are you on their payroll? Get somebody that takes ownership of those fryers and make sure that they can do a good job and that you can count on them. And there is some